You're listening to Let's Stay Together, which is a podcast about Fruits Basket by Natsuki Takaya. I'm Ellen.
And I'm Kayla.
I wanted to be excited at the front this time and not the end. Today we're discussing chapter 17 and 18, and we're just going to go straight into it because we don't have any announcements or anything this time. So, summary, discussion, and spoilery discussion, just like we always do. So,
And break.
yeah. So, chapter 17 begins with the sound of the school bell, and the Gangs teacher is saying that it's time for pencils down. One of their nameless classmates is like, nobody uses pencils anymore. Everyone uses mechanical pencils. To which she replies, shut up, you lose 10 points. This is my teaching spirit animal. If I ever go back to teaching, I guess I'll do that again. Anyway, Tohru stretches and sighs a sigh of relief because final exams are over, and Tohru thinks that she loves the feeling of freedom after, but studying beforehand is pretty hard. And Yuki pops by to ask her how it went, to which she hops up excitedly and replies that it went well, and she was able to answer more questions than usual. Uo and Hana also come over and congratulate her. Hana says that Tohru's the type who can get anything done if she puts her mind to it. Tohru says that Yuki helped her study, which we did see in like an earlier omake, if you remember it. I don't think that's what she's referring to, but it reminded me of that. And we also see this little flashback of them studying while Shigure is like teasing them or something, and there's a little note that says Shigure gets in the way, which I thought was really funny. Tohru thanks him, and Yuki smiles his lovely, beautiful, genuine smile and says, oh, like, come on, I didn't do that much. And all the fangirls in the foreground are freaking out, and they're like, oh my god, Sama-kun is smiling. What are they talking about? And they want to find out, but they're afraid of Hana, so they don't. Speaking of Hana, one of the classmates is like, hey, Hanajima, I bet you did great because of your waves and junk. And then how did you do on last year's finals? And she's like, well, let me think. I needed supplementary lessons every day, and my parents were called in for conferences. Yes, mother was crying. And then, of course, the response is like stick figure silence, as Takaya is fond of doing. And the kid is like, but your sixth sense, to which Hana says, a sixth sense can't make up for a total lack of common sense. Uo says, relax, Hanajima, there are a lot of successful people who are stupid. And Kyo is like, you talking about me? And Uo is like, I sure am. And he's like, I never had supplementary lessons, or I had my parents called in. And so they keep arguing, and one of, I think, some guy in their class, who I think is one of Kyo's friends, because he calls him Kyo. So he's like, Kyo actually does study. And Uo is like, oh, you're one of those guys that studies all the time and ends up studying all the wrong things. And the friend is like, you didn't do that again, did you? Which was like... So they continue bickering in the background, and Yuki's talking to Tohru again, and he's like, well, Kyo was up in his room a lot, and Tohru is like, yeah, I guess he must have been studying. Tohru thinks, with this kind of relaxed smile on her face, that it's strange to think of Kyo studying, that moving around energetically suits him better. Her thoughts are interrupted when she gets called over by their teacher. They have a conversation, kind of away from everyone else, and the teacher asks something, and Tohru looks a bit surprised, and then she lowers her head, I guess, like, I don't know, shamefully. And we see little sweat drops that I guess indicate that she's embarrassed, but the teacher seems to wave it off and smiles. Yuki and Kyo see the exchange, but they don't hear it, so they're just kind of left wondering about it. And I love how they're both, like, watching out for her. Like, they're both there. Like, first they were kind of arguing. Like, Yuki came over to talk to her, and Kyo was separate, but then they're shown together when they're, like, watching after her, which I thought was cute. When Tohru returns, Yuki asks if something is wrong, and Tohru is like, I just have to work hard. Go work, go. And Kyo and Yuki and Hana are like, what she says in Japanese is baito, because arubaito means part-time job. I remember this very clearly from the anime, and it makes me laugh every time. Go work. It seems a little weird, but then when you learn that it's that, it makes a little more sense. So we cut to Tohru at work, and Momiji is helping her out, like scrubbing the floor by hand, which is a little weird, but whatever, I don't know. And I like that there's this little tiny detail that one of Momiji's like knee socks has kind of fallen down because he's been helping her. I don't know if you noticed that in the drawing. I noticed it. He says that he's happy her exams went well and that it's almost time for spring break, which is exciting because Momiji has a present. And Tohru asks what the present is, and he says it's a secret until they get back to Shigure's. Also, all the other cleaning ladies are standing around at the end of that kind of like scene. They're like, who is that kid? Where did he come from? Tohru and Momiji return to Shigure's house, and Yuki is behind them, so maybe he like let them in or went to the door to greet them or something, and he's kind of like he has this look on his face. Momiji says that it's the first time he'd been to Shigure's, which is interesting, because I thought that he had been before, but I guess I'm just not remembering that correctly. And they all of them comment about how hyper he is. Like, that's why Yuki was kind of like meh in the first thing, and Kyo's out of the bath, and he's like, oh, what are you doing here? And Shigure is like, oh, you're so hyped up for this time of the night. Like, all of them comment about it. Like, of course, Yuki and Kyo would be annoyed, especially Kyo, who has just come out of the bath and starts to, like, noogie Momiji immediately, which makes him whine in his, like, adorable way of doing it. But yeah, it's funny that all of them commented on that. Once everyone has settled down and I think Tohru got some food for Momiji. Momiji says that he has a question for Tohru. The question is, when the snow melts, what does it become? No, I'm just kidding. He asks what day it is, and she's like, oh, it's the 15th, which is the day after White Day. So a couple of episodes ago, or maybe in a couple of episodes, we've talked about various like Japanese holidays and traditions and junk. So if you don't know, I feel like maybe the audience for this podcast is familiar with that. So probably. Yeah, probably. But if you don't know what White Day is March 14th. It's like the month after Valentine's Day. And people who received chocolate are supposed to give something back in return. And by people, what I mean is like girls give guys chocolate on Valentine's Day, and then guys are expected to give something of greater value as a return gift on White Day.
I learned this from playing Harvest Moon.
Did you really?
Yeah.
I think I probably learned this from this anime. I wouldn't be surprised.
I don't know if it's the first time I heard of it, but it's the first time I was like actively understood it. Cause
you have to give something back.
Oh, yes, they give you a gift, you give them a gift back, or vice versa, whichever one you're playing as.
Interesting. There's an interesting, and like even for people who knew about this, there's a Tofugu podcast about White Day or about giving chocolate. So I'll just like post a link to it as a kind of minor side note if you're interested. But yeah, that's why he's here, to give her a gift if you weren't aware of that. So Momiji announces his gift will be a trip to an onsen, and Tohru was like, what? I think she says, huh, or something in the translation or whatever. He calls it mine and Tohru's Steamy Onsen Heartful tour, which I'm thinking of naming the episode that. And Shigure is
like, you don't have to name it.
Yeah, exactly. And Tohru finally reacts, other than her, like, huh? And she's like, I couldn't go to such an extravagant place and forget about Mom. I wonder if she would forgive me. And Tohru was like, it's just an onsen. It's not a big deal. They eventually, like, huh?
You said, and Tohru was like...
Oh, sorry. Shigure is like, it's just an onsen. It's not a big deal. But eventually they convince her that it would be a good chance for her to relax and to rest. And Momiji's bubbly speech bubble says that if Tohru is happy, her Muti would be happy too. And then he's kind of like, oh, maybe you don't like it. But she's like, of course I do. And she's grateful. And she says, tears welling up in her eyes. And Momiji says that Yuki and Kyo are coming too. And Kyo is like, you can't just make direct decisions for other people. And Momiji, with his little bunny ears poking out, is grabbing Kyo and being like, what? You're not coming? And Yuki says that he will go. So then, of course, Kyo is like, there's no way that I'm going. So Shigure butts in and is like, oh, sorry to bring this up at the most awkward time possible, but your grandpa called and said that you didn't pay your deposit for your class trip and that he could pay if he has to, which is like, you're like, oh, sorry to butt in, but I just remembered this incredibly awkward thing while every single person is in this room. I was like, oh, thanks. Good job, Shigure. But of course...
So I love the little doodle of her grandpa holding the phone.
Yes. Every time there's a doodle of her grandpa, it makes me happy. Every time I see her grandpa, I'm like, oh, like he was in the... Of course, he's in the anime episode that we'll talk about later this week. But I was like, yay, Grandpa's here. It was like the one where they were like, oh, we left her to go to Hawaii. And he's like singing the Aloha song or whatever. Anyway, Tohru's like, no, he can't. And in a blushing and with a lot of blushing and sweat dropping, says that a lot happened last month and she already arranged to pay for it with her teacher. And she apologizes for making them worry. And Kyo and Yuki realize that that's what she was talking about. Like they actually have a little tiny one panel like flashback to her talking to the teacher. Shigure says, she's like, but Tohru-kun, you worked so hard. Where did all the money? And then at that moment, he and Shigure, he's Shigure. He and Yuki and Kyo.
So, I'm having trouble identifying Shigure.
He's just, yeah. I don't know. I don't know what's wrong with me. In my note, it says Kyo, Yuki, and Shigure, but of course, like, Shigure is the one talking, so anyway, whatever, it's fine. Everything's fine. So, at that moment, they all realize where the money went, which was to getting them all chocolate, of course. Momiji and Tohru continue talking in the background because Momiji doesn't notice or think about it, I guess. And Kyo suddenly interjects and he's like, "You id!" Which shocks both of them. And Takaya draws that little rage meter that represents how angry he is, and it shows it transitioning down to him chilling out. And eventually, Kyo manages to squeak out, "The bath, you go." And Tohru is like, oh, and then, like, gets up and leaves and goes to the bath. Kyo, like, flumps down, like he's exhausted from controlling his anger, I guess, or his, in this case, I think it's frustration. If I say the word anger, I think it's like, you could substitute it with frustration, because it's not like he's mad at her, he's, like, angry that, yeah, anyway.
That she's also got, like, I think 5 little, like, anger vein pops on him.
Yeah, he's just
talking to her.
Just exuding anger. Shigure comments that he controlled his anger well, and they all talk about why didn't they realize, and Kyo goes into a full frustration rant, saying that they can't tell because she's always smiling. Why does she have to be like that? She only makes things harder for herself. She could have just used the money for herself, or, like, used it to pay her class fee. And one day she'll regret it. She'll be at a disadvantage her whole life. And Momiji quietly is like, "Hey, listen." And he cuts into a story.
Also eating a snack during Kyo's rant.
Yeah, he's not fazed by Kyo's rant at all. He's just like chomp chomp. I think there's a little, like, munch munch sound effect while he's eating. And he's like, hey. At school, one of his classmates brought in a book of short stories, including one called The Most Foolish Traveler in the World. In the story, while traveling, many people tricked the traveler and took advantage of his generosity. Whenever he helped people, tears would stream down his face, and he would say, "Please be happy." Once the traveler gave away his last belonging, he was naked and he was ashamed to be seen, so he went into the creepy, creepy forest where he met monsters who also wanted things from him. They wanted to eat him, and so they tricked him as well. And there's dialogues for all of the people, as Momiji's talking about this, being like, "My kid is sick," or "My sister is sick," or whatever, including the monster. And the monster is like, "My child is sick," and there's a little tiny note pointing to it that says "clever?" which I thought was funny. It's like I think it says, like, the monsters use their clever tricks said clever things to him to get him to give them stuff or whatever. Anyway, of course, the traveler gives the monsters his arms and his legs, and eventually he was just ahead, and he gave his eyes to the last monster that he met. And the monster gave him something in return. He was like, "Here, you can have this in return." He drops a piece of paper with the word "fool" written on it. The traveler cried and said, "Thank you, thank you. This is the first time that anyone has given me anything. I'm so happy. Thank you." And the traveler died while he was crying. At the end of this horrifying children's story, Yuki, Kyo, and Shigure just remain kind of quiet and contemplative. And Momiji continues that all the other kids laughed. When we see in his memory, they're all like, "Oh, what a loser." But Momiji says that he closed his eyes and he thought about the traveler and how lucky the traveler was. And Shigure smiles and pats Momiji affectionately on the head. And Momiji continues, "Loss, suffering, it's pointless to think about them. The traveler didn't know about them. It might seem stupid to some people, but it's not stupid to me. I won't trick anyone, even if other people think that person deserves it. I just want to make them happy." Momiji looks up with a knowing smile and asks, "Yuki, Kyo, do you really think that's stupid? When you close your eyes, what do you think?" And we see on a full page panel, Yuki and Kyo looking contemplative still, with floral imagery kind of surrounding them, and a drawing of Chibi Tohru bringing them some, like, hot food or tea or something, because she's using oven mitts. And the dialogue overlaid is, "Oh, how?" And, like, the translation is a little interesting, I thought. I was like, how, what? And so I looked at the Yen Press one as well, and it says, "Oh, what a wonderful." So it's kind of like, I'm not sure it's kind of a weird, like, thing to interpret. But anyway, I guess we can discuss that scene. Mm-hmm. "I'll go," we see at the bottom left-hand speech bubble at the bottom of that page. And we transition to the next scene, which is the next page. It's the next morning. Kyo, in his classic crop top outfit that he is known for throughout the fandom, talks to Tohru as she hangs up the laundry. And Tohru was like, "Oh, good morning, Kyo." And Kyo continues, "The Onsen, I'll go too." It's like, Kyo, learn how to say good morning. Like, what the hell? I guess he's being very direct and to the point.
Like, he's like, "I've been up for hours."
I've got to figure out how to tell her that I'm going to go to the Onsen too. And then he just goes, I'll go to the onsen. I'll go. Oh, Kyo, you're so precious. He explains that his return gift to Tohru will be to put up with Yuki. He's like, I don't know if you care or whatever, but, and still holding, so like when he walks up to her, she's like holding something like she's about to put it on the line, and she's still holding this like towel or whatever she was hanging up, and she like clenches it, like she like brings her arms together, and she's like, no, I do care. It'll be so much better with you there. I'm so happy. Thank you so much. And she says, I'm so happy. Thank you so much twice. And she's still like clutching the towel. And Kyo is shocked, I think, at her enthusiasm, but he eventually responds with this look of like, I don't know, like affectionate concern is what I
think it's also that her words are like the same ones from the story.
Yeah, you're right.
I'm so happy. Thank you so much thing.
Yeah, you're right.
Mm-hmm.
I should have noticed that. Thank you. I'm so happy. Thank you. Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you're right. It's like Momiji nailed it with the story. Yeah. And Kyo eventually says, like, you really are hopeless, which is really adorable. And I think we see Toru's reaction too, which is also a little bit surprised looking. And then Momiji pops in and breaks up the moment by saying, Kyo's got the hots. And so he blushes like mad crazy. And we see this like small-eyed, like surprised Tohru face too. And of course, he's obliged to reply, I do not. And so they bicker. Yuki, who's finally woken up and come downstairs, is like, what's all this racket? And Tohru greets him. She's like, good morning. It says Kyo will be coming to the onsen as well. And Yuki also seemed a little surprised and then annoyed. And he's like, first the date and now this too? And he's like, well, I guess there's nothing that can be done. So he seemed annoyed about it, which was interesting.
I like how Yuki hasn't even managed to get his shirt buttoned.
Momiji is still in his jams.
Yeah.
I thought it was just like a fabulous floral shirt, but if you look in like the next chapter, he's wearing a different shirt. So I think he's still in his pajamas when he starts to be annoying. So anyway, the last panel is Momiji and Tohru saying that they can't wait to go to the onsen, and there's a little like text block at the bottom that's like, the Steamy Onsen tour is about to begin or something. Or it's like, and so our Steamy Onsen tour begins, which is funny. All right, so going into chapter 16, which immediately follows this, it's like the events of that day. So the chapter opens with Momiji, Tohru, Yuki, and Kyo arriving at the onsen. Oh, also, I guess if you don't know what an onsen is, if you don't know what white day is and you don't know what an onsen is a hot spring that's been, I guess, like turned into, I guess, I don't know if onsen is the word for just like hot spring in general, or if it's just like the word for one that's been like brought into a place where you can go bathe in it.
Fancy versions of them.
Yeah. And then they go to stay at an inn. You can go and stay at places where they've built like buildings around the onsen so that you can stay in like a fancy inn near the bath and go and bathe in the hot spring and then chill. So it's like, it's supposed to be a really nice, relaxing vacation.
According to Wikipedia, an onsen is a Japanese hot spring. The term also extends to cover the bathing facilities and traditional inns frequently situated around a hot spring.
Nice. I was right. I guess. It's almost like I learned something after being an anime fan for so many years. Tohru, Kyo, Yuki, and Momiji arrive at the... Oh, see, I've said them in a different order than what's written in my notes, and so I had to make sure I covered all of them. They all arrive at the onsen.
Not Shigure.
Not Shigure. He's not there. Conspicuously absent. Tohru says the inn is so pretty. And she's like, getting to go to an onsen and getting to go to a charter bus? And she thinks about it. And then out loud she says, I feel like a princess. Momiji's like, Princess Tohru. And it's really cute.
This is Tohru, the charter bus.
Princess Tohru, the charter bus. Yeah, it's like, it's funny that, I don't know, it's perspective. So anyway, a ghastly looking woman slides open the door and welcomes them to the inn, and Takaya uses another like kind of ghosty figure silence panel, or like what I just, every time she uses them now, I'm assuming that means that it was like a silent awkward pause.
I love the little like ghosty figure of the onsen lady.
What does it look like?
She's
slumped on the
little figure slumped on the door.
We gotta know where everybody's standing with the ghosty figures. It's not like she's just there. Yes. The other one earlier, it was stick figures, so it seems like she's still like alternating back and forth. But
like, I guess like outlines versus stick figures.
Yeah. I wonder if there's a word for that. I call them ghosty figures because I drew figures like that for a work thing once, and another person called them ghost people. She's like, who drew the ghost people? And I was like, they're not ghosts, they're just like abstract figures. But anyway, I thought it was funny. So that's That's my term for it. I feel like it's accurate, though. Anyway, so we see the ghost people, and then Momiji pipes up and it's like, she's the concubine, and Yuki's like, don't you mean she's the concierge or whatever? Which was funny.
I was wondering if you knew what that was in the Japanese.
I did look it up.
That pun was. Yeah.
Let me tell you what it is. Let me tell you what it says. Momiji says, Meisho-san, and Yuki is like, Okami daro. So he's like, Okami is like the proper word, and when it goes through the chapter, like they keep calling her Okami-san, Okami-san.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know what Meisho is. I looked it up, and Jisho, like typically when I use like Japanese dictionaries, I use jisho.org. So Jisho didn't have a thing for it. It might be like a short form of another word that I don't know, which it probably is. But like in the Yen press version, it's also translated to like mistress. If Momiji says like, she's my mistress, and Yuki is like, I think you mean she's the hostess or something like that. Hold on, wait, I can tell you exactly. I brought them all here. I thought you might ask. And I was like, I can't figure out what this word is that he says. Yeah, so yeah, she is slumped against the door. I can see it now. Yeah. It's funny. She says, so Momiji says she's my mistress, and Yuki says more like the hostess. So does that answer your question? As thoroughly as possible, kind of. Just, it wasn't even like close. It wasn't like a play on words. Like it wasn't a play on Okami either. So like that's why I thought it was kind of confusing, and I don't know why he picks that word. I
assumed it was something like that.
No, it's not.
Because it's usually a pun in Japanese.
Yeah. No, I don't know. Yeah, it's a really weird one. Like that, I can't.
You can usually, because usually you can see like things like that, and you can go, "Oh, that was a pun in Japanese."
It's like
I had to struggle to translate.
It's like when Tohru was like a fu, and he's like a fork, but in Japanese it was like a guy. Ga, and he's like a ga, which is like moth or whatever. Yeah. That was funny. That was something that I learned this time we read through it. Yeah, no, it's not, I don't know. It's definitely a pun that I don't understand. It's definitely supposed to be a pun, or maybe Momichi's just being weird. Like, I don't know. It could be that just said what he thinks the word is, but I don't understand what the word's supposed to be. It's clearly like, Momiji's dialogue in Japanese is really interesting. Like, his dialogue often uses, a lot of like katakana. So like katakana is, in Japanese there's kanji, which is like the characters that are adapted from Chinese. There's hiragana, which is phonetic, and then there's also katakana, which is phonetic and is used for foreign words. You probably know this, I think.
Yeah.
But sometimes katakana can be used, like all the sound effects are usually written in katakana. Also, which is how I knew the school bell was ringing, because it says "king kong kang kong" or something like that in the background, and like so sometimes it's katakana is also used to represent a pronunciation. Sometimes foreign words or sometimes words that are like foreign that are shortened, or sometimes it's a Japanese word that's shortened. It's also represented with katakana. So in this case, I think it's some Japanese word that I don't know that's represented. It's shortened. It's abbreviated that he's saying. But he says sometimes, like when he says toru, it's written in katakana as well. So like in his me and Toru's like hot spring tour, like the name for that, which I also looked up, because it says Heartful hot spring tour, and I was like, maybe it says Heartful in there, which it does not. But it says boku to toru, and boku is me, you know that probably, and then toru, but it says it in katakana and not kanji or hiragana, the way that you would normally write it. So I don't know if it's just supposed to like represent something about the way that he pronounces words. I don't know if it's like, I don't know. I see that a lot in his dialogue specifically. I think it has to do with the way that he talks. It's something about so I don't know. I don't have a good explanation for that, but. Hey friends, this is Ellen from the future. I just wanted to report back that after we recorded this, I finally figured it out. And the way that I figured it out was by checking the original 2001 anime, because I thought that I maybe read the Japanese wrong like a chump because I'm still learning, or maybe I wasn't looking in the right place, so I wanted to check and make sure that Momiji did pronounce the word that way, and he did, and on top of that, they explained the joke, which is that he pronounced the kanji for the word okami wrong. So, what he says is meisho, the word that they're saying to describe the hostess, the name for the hostess, or whatever, what a hostess is called, is okami, which is made of two kanji. One is the word for woman by itself, and the other one by itself means commander. they have multiple pronunciations. So one pronunciation of the first kanji is me, one pronunciation of the second kanji is sho. So when Momiji says it, he reads it as me sho, which is not correct. Often when you combine kanji together, they have certain pronunciations when they're combined in a certain way, and in this case, it should be pronounced okami, and that's the joke. So I think the interesting thing about this is that the choice on the part of the translators, it's a difficult thing to translate because it's like, yeah, like using the wrong word is funny in English, but in this case, it's like kind of a more specific facet of Japanese that's not really necessarily directly represented in English. Like it's more like saying something wrong rather than using a completely incorrect word. And I think also the choice that the translators make to call it mistress versus hostess and concubine versus concierge give it a specific connotation that this joke like doesn't necessarily have in Japanese, because as far as I can tell, meisho is not a real word, or it's not a shortened form of a real word like I thought when we were talking about this before. So I just want to drop in that because I finally explained it. And now Kayla knows too. Hi, Kayla. Alright, I'm going to get back into the regular action. Bye, friends. Anyway, and then he continues to call her that, which is also funny. So, speaking of the hostess, which is what I refer to her as, like much like Mi-chan, who's Shigure's editor that we met, I think, last chapter. Yeah, last chapter. Much like her scream begging, the hostess scream invites them in, and Tohru is like, "Yes, ma'am." Yuki and Kyo, while they're walking through the hostess is taking them to their rooms, and while they're walking around, Kyo and Yuki are like, I don't know, eye rolling, or they're kind of like shifty-eyed, looking around at the onsen as they're walking. And Momiji says the concubine, hostess, is also a soma, who lives here at the onsen for health reasons. And she apologizes. The hostess apologizes for scaring them and Tohru. And Tohru says it's okay. It must be hard on her health, and that her health is the most important thing. And the hostess remarks that Tohru is kind and thanks her. She also asks about Shigure, who isn't coming because apparently it's a deadline. And Tohru wonders if the hostess knows about the zodiac. She takes them to the boys' room, and Kyo complains about having to share a room with Yuki, and Momiji's like, oh, you just want to share a room with Tohru, and Yuki is like, disgusting. And the hostess freaks out with her scream yelling and is like, Kyo-chan, even if you are the cat, I believe you were a good boy. When did you become such a lascivious child? Lascivious child. I had to look up how to say this word. Lascivious? Yeah. Lascivious.
I thought it was lascivious, but...
Let me...
No, I guess.
Good, I'm glad we're on the same page. I was like, am I the only one who doesn't know?
In other words, it doesn't get said very often. It gets written fairly often, though.
I listened to it in this Google dictionary, and it says lascivious. Here, I'm going to send it to you on Skype. Today we learned. I also had to look it up because I was like, I don't think I've heard... I feel like I've heard that word before, but it's like not a common one. Like, I would pick like... If I was going to say that, I would pick like lewd or salacious or something like that. Lustful. Naughty. Anyway.
The naughty boy.
Kyo's a naughty boy. Anyway, she freaks out. She's like, you were a good boy. When did you become such a lascivious child? How frightful. And he's like, you're the one who's frightful. And so she scream apologizes to the world for his lasciviousness. Anyway, later in their room, Kyo is like, it's finally... Or then he acquiesces to staying with Yuki or whatever. Later in their room, Kyo is like, it's finally quiet. And Momiji suggests that they go to a bath before they have dinner. And he says to Tohru, let's go together. And she's like, okay. And meanwhile, in the dark corner of the room, Kyo and Yuki are silent. And Kyo gets up and starts nooging Momiji again, I think. And is like, you're the most lascivious of all. Yuki is kind of in the background, and he notices a package in a bag. I guess it's his bag, and he picks it up and kind of looks at it. He says to Momiji not to be so selfish. He didn't bring Tohru there to annoy her, right? And Teary Chibi Momiji thinks about it, and he's like, 9. Kyo sighs, as if everything has finally been taken care of, but then Momiji adds, let's sleep together tonight, okay? And Yuki and Kyo are like, he doesn't get it. So they all go out to bathe in the separate baths. And Tohru is like, this is big enough for Momiji to splash around in here, which of course is what he's doing, which is hilarious. I think like in the original anime, he's like fully swimming around, which is really funny. Which you're not supposed to do, I guess, FYI.
Yeah, and it's Yuki looking mildly annoyed in the background.
They're like, we're just trying to relax, and fucking Momiji is like energetic all over the place. Tohru says, it's her first open air bath in a hot spring. I guess like it's kind of expensive to go to a hot spring, so maybe they couldn't afford to travel or whatever. I wouldn't be surprised because it was just her and her mom, right?
Yeah.
So she pulls out a picture of her mom that's like wrapped in like a plastic
Her
bag.
Mom would be allowed in one.
Oh yeah, that's true. I wonder if she has tattoos or anything.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, if she, yeah, I don't know. It's not stated, but I guess she might. I don't know if girl gangs are.
To me just now.
I don't know if girl gangs are big on the tattoos. It's like not. She's not like she was in the Yakuza. It's just. No. Who knows? I don't know. But I'm sure, like, regardless, it wasn't something they were able to do, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Which is also partly why Tohru thinks it's so lavish. I almost said lascivious. Tohru thinks it's so lascivious.
So naughty.
So going to the onsen is so naughty. I think that's partly why Tohru thinks it's so lavish, because they have like a chartered bus and like they're going to, they get like private, essentially like, they're the only ones there. I don't know if it's supposed to be that they have private baths for their rooms, which is also typically more expensive if you're going to an onsen. So like, but then the hostess comes and joins Tohru in the women's bath. So maybe they're public, but I don't know. They're definitely by themselves, which is, I think, pretty luxurious. Not lascivious. The whole place. Yeah, which, I don't know, maybe that's also why Kyo and Yuki are looking around like, what the fuck? Like, anyway, so Tohru pulls out a picture of her mom that's wrapped in like a Ziploc baggie so that she can enjoy the hot spring too. And the hostess comes out and joins Tohru. She says the water is supposed to be good for her health. She asks about the photo, and Tohru explains that her mother passed away last year and that she wanted her to be able to enjoy the onsen as well. And the hostess thinks that that's nice. The hostess also goes on to explain that her son is the monkey of the zodiac. Woo! She said that she was nervous when she first heard about Tohru, knowing the family secret, fearing that would endanger them, like him, her son, and the other members of the zodiac. But she apologizes for feeling that way, and she's relieved. She asks that when Tohru meet her son to please treat him kindly, like the others, and Tohru says, of course. And she asks what he's like, and she's like imagining a monkey. The hostess doesn't say anything. And in this case, instead of seeing like stick figures, we see like a little bamboo fountain that I imagine like clonking down in the distance. Yeah. And then the hostess apologizes again, saying, from the world's point of view, he's like that, but deep down he's very kind. He's my precious baby, and I'll apologize to the world. And Tohru is like, okay, I'm sorry, I won't ask anymore. Cut to later that night. The gang is chillin', and Momiji tells us that Richan is the name of the monkey. He's like, oh yeah, I forgot to mention Richan. So now we know the monkey's name as well. Momiji also invites Tohru to play ping pong because Kyo and Yuki probably won't play with him. And then we cut to Yuki and Kyo playing, and Kyo has rolled up his sleeves because obviously this is a serious competition. Kyo hits the ball straight off of the table, and Yuki's like, didn't I tell you that you have to let it bounce? And then Yuki picks it up and bounces it, I think, and gets a point. And then he's like, this is a bad idea. And Tohru was like, good luck, Kyo, in the background. And then Kyo flips the table, which is something that I didn't think that I would be able to say about the series. I mean, I knew that I'd be able to talk about him breaking the table and like other stuff, but never flipping it. But of course, instead of flipping it, the table folds in half, right? Yeah. Did I ever tell you about the time that I saw a guy try to flip a table at McDonald's? This is a side note.
No. These would be the tables that are bolted to the ground.
Exactly! So I was in this McDonald's, which is like by day, not that sketchy, but by night, very sketchy. As soon as the sun goes down, it's like super sketchy in there. And I had worked late, and I went to get like a burger or whatever, and I was just chilling. And I think that this guy I think he got in an argument with some girl that was there, and the girl left, and he was there for like a second or two, or maybe like 30 seconds longer. And he went to like flip a table, and like I saw the whole thing because we were sitting like, I was sitting far enough away from him that I could see it. He stuck his hands on the table and he's like, ugh, and tried to flip it, but then nothing happened, and then he slammed his hands down on the table, and I just like, as soon as he walked away, I was like, these are the things you get to see when you live in a city. And I was like, I can't come here at night anymore. Like, this is ridiculous. Remind me to never eat here again. Oh, good times. Anyway, yeah. Are they all bolted? I guess most of them were bolted down, and I just never thought about it until I saw that guy. It was really funny. That's a side note. If I leave this in, you're welcome, everyone, for this beautiful story of mine. Anyway, Kyo tries to flip the ping pong table, which of course folds it in half, and he's like, real men fight with their fists, and Yuki is like, you're the one who challenged me. This whole scene with Yuki and Kyo was like perfect. Yeah. It's exactly like them. It was great.
Yeah, I was going to take a note on like, different funny parts, and I just wound up writing ping pong scene instead of individual things that made me laugh.
The whole ping pong, yeah, you're right. The whole ping pong scene is like the highlight of this aspect of this chapter, I think. Yeah, you're right. It is funny. The whole scene is funny. So he's like, Tohru is like, why don't you play with me? And Kyo is like, well, I won't go easy on you because you're a girl. So Yuki's like, don't forget to let it bounce. And Kyo is like, shut up, which is great.
I also like how when he says, like, I won't go easy on you just because you're a girl, Tohru's like, okay.
Yeah, no worries. So, I mean, she knows who Kyo is in his heart at this point, I feel like. Yeah. So, of course, she's like, whatever. And so Kyo serves, and suddenly this has turned into a sports manga once again, because there's a little cut in the middle of the page with Tohru, like, it's like her face watching the ball coming, and she sees it coming, and she swings, and she says, ha, for power, of course, and completely misses it, so much so that the ball bounces, like, twice on the floor, and Momiji has enough time to, like, stare at it, and then Tohru looks back at it, too, and then she turns back to Kyo, and she's like, I missed. It reminded me of when she picks up Kagura and she's like, I figured it out. Kagura's the boy.
Her face is so serious.
I missed. And Kyo was like, you really suck. But it was just like, so good. Like, it's so, the way that's represented where it's like there's so much time for there's enough time for the ball to bounce on the table, bounce down, and like roll away, and then she turns around and looks at it, and then she turns around back to him and faces him and says, I missed. It's so good. I laughed out loud. Anyway, Kyo says she really sucks, so Momiji is like, look who's talking. So they start bickering, of course, as they are wont to do, and Yuki kind of stands silently in the background, and then he awkwardly walks away, and Tohru notices it and follows him.
I also like how Momiji is basically saying bring it in German.
Yeah, you're right.
It's like, if you're going to do something, then do it.
Yeah, it's a little awkward, but yes. Michi's like, bring it on. Yeah, anyway. Yeah, you're right. Their arguing is funny. I like the way that Kyo and Momiji bicker. They have a funny relationship. It's kind of like a little sibling relationship or something.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, outside, Tohru asks if Yuki is okay. And it turns out that he's actually like cracking up in his Yuki way, and he says, like, you were so serious, it was so funny, which I agree with completely. Yeah. And she's like, you could have just laughed in front of me, and he's like, there's no fucking way I'd laugh in front of Kyo. That's not actually what he said, but that's how I interpreted it. Everyone who's listening to this should understand that all of the almost, unless I say that it's a direct quote, it's definitely interpretation on my part. Yeah. Especially
too much. Let us sum up.
Yeah, basically. Anyway, he's like, there's no fucking way I'd laugh in front of Kyo. And he's also like, I haven't even laughed like that in front of my parents. And in my notes, there's a sad face next to that. It's like, oh, precious. Which, of course, Yuki frowns a little, and so did I. And so Yuki remembers something, and he pulls out the gift from earlier that he was looking at, and he hands it to her. He wanted to give it to her sooner, but the timing wasn't right. This is his White Day gift that he's giving to her, his return gift. And so Tohru opens it, and it's precious ribbons for her hair. And so she thanks him. He says he didn't know what to get her, but he thought that they would be fitting. So she immediately undoes her precious French braid and ties her hair back with one of the ribbons, and her expression is so cute. Mm-hmm. We're finally back in the shoujo action, guys. This is what I'm in it for. But she with
all the bubbles in the background.
And her little face, she like ties the ribbon in her hair, and then she looks up, and with a little smile, it's so charming. Mm-hmm. Yuki smiles, his precious smile, and he picks up the ribbon. He wraps his fingers around the ribbon, I guess, and picks up the one that she's wearing in her hair. And he asks, do you like it, princess? And Tohru blushes, and she says, yes, she does. And she's very touched. And he says, then I'm greatly honored. And she continues to blush and thinks he really is like a prince. So we transition back inside. You see them like walking in the background, and we see some of Toru's thoughts overlaid over the next couple of pages. And it says, Mom, there are many princes in the Soma family. Handsome, cute, and kind. I'm really very happy to be able to spend time with them like this. That's a direct quote.
I'm so fucking happy to be able to spend time with them.
If I wrote Toy Story, I'd be like, damn. I'd be like, God damn it, Mom. I'm so happy to be with the fucking Somas. They're all so fucking great. They're so fucking cute and fucking handsome. Fuck. You're welcome if I keep this in.
This is why there's a tiny E next to the podcast title. If you go on iTunes.
I should have put the E in the the image for the podcast so that's very clear. There should just be a big like censor bar on the onigiri or something. Like crying, laughing. Anyway, all right. Yeah, that is why. It's my language choice. It's all about me. So we see her later that night. We see her and Momiji laying down together, their futon side by side, and she thinks, "Tonight's another night that I must be thankful for." And she closes her eyes and thinks, "I'm so fucking grateful." No, I'm just kidding. She says, "I'm so grateful." In the morning, the gang leaves, and the hostess is leaning on Kyo and letting them know not to hesitate to come back, which is really funny when she's seeing them off. And Tohru says that she should take care of herself, or to take care of herself. Tohru asks about Momiji. She's like, only be seeing you at the office now, right? And she asks if he's going into middle school next year. And he says, nope, he and Haru will be starting high school at their high school. And Tohru's like, And Yuki is like, didn't you know that Momiji and Haru are the same age? They're like a year younger than us. And Tohru imagines both of them, and it's like, how? Like, the whole left-hand side of the page is her saying, how? And then she's like, I don't know what to be more surprised about. Momiji's like, be surprised by all of it, which is really funny. The last panel, we see Haru is visiting Shigure, and Shigure is like, what do you think of my return gift, which is a maid outfit? And Haru is like, just make sure you don't get arrested, which is funny. There's also an omake at the end of this chapter, where Kyo is like, normally I hate girly stuff like fortune telling, which is also funny because it's like, is fortune telling girly? Like, I don't know, whatever.
Only if you don't use parrots.
It's a good reference. I liked it. Everyone can participate in parrot fortune telling. Anyway, he's like, normally I hate girly stuff like fortune telling, but do you think I'll beat Yuki? And she doesn't say anything. Then Kyo freaks out. And Yuki's like, you're very superstitious. You probably don't even whistle at night. And then in the corner, there's a tiny chibi Tohru saying, if you whistle at night, burglars will come. Which makes me laugh every time I see it, which is specifically why I called out this omake. It's really funny. Hana is in a lot of omake. I think we talked about this a couple episodes ago. She adds a lot to the omakes, which is funny. And that's the end of chapter 16. It's the end of volume
3.
Yes! We did it again. It's like this keeps going.
I know.
Oh my god.
Progress.
Fuck.
Crazy.
I mean. All right. So, here's the things that I wanted to discuss. I think one thing I want to talk about is the Foolish Traveler.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, which is one of I guess it's probably the real meat of chapter 17. I think it's interesting that Momiji has this perspective, like the other kids. He's like, the other kids all laugh, which is really sad. But then he has some exposure to some of the harder things in life. Like he was the one who talked about the Tori's story of him losing Kana. And he seems to have this kind of a specific perspective about what is important to kind of cherish and enjoy. Maybe there's something related to some of the social isolation and some of the negatives we've seen so far about the curse. Maybe that's how he has that perspective instead of the other kids in his class.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So just in general, even though he's a fairly childish character overall, he keeps showing a lot of maturity with regard to emotional things like that. So.
He's got a high EI, as we might say. Yes. And then we learned that there's another member of the Zodiac, whose name Richan, who's the monkey. So eventually we'll get to
Richan-san, as Tohru says, which is adorable.
And then we also have their teacher is back, who's awesome, real sassy. That was kind of earlier in the chapter, but I don't have that much to say about it. I just like every time that she's shown. It's great.
She's now established as a recurring teacher in Understay.
I thought it was funny how she's
background dialogue attributed to a teacher kind of thing.
Exactly. The same teacher at least every time.
Yeah. I think this is the first direct mention of Yuki's parents.
Yeah, I think you're right.
I think when they're going back for New Year's, Toru's like, oh, you guys probably haven't seen your parents in a long time, but they don't really comment on it. But this is Yuki directly mentioning his parents.
Yeah, I guess it implies...
Might be the first mention of any of the any of the Soma's parents.
Yeah, I'm just thinking about it. I don't think any of the ones that we've met yet have talked about their parents at all.
It's interesting.
Yeah.
It's implied to be strained or stoic in some way relationship.
Yeah, it doesn't seem like it doesn't seem like, I guess, like he says he never laughed like that around them, so at least it wasn't like maybe like a warm kind of home life or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's definitely, you're right. I don't think any of them talked about their parents at all, which is something to note, I think.
Yeah.
We've met so many characters. I mean, we actually, on the flip side though, we didn't meet Richan, but we met Richan's mother.
Mm-hmm.
So, Richan-san's mother.
Yeah, I think especially in contrast to, like Tohru's parents come up a lot.
Mm-hmm. Even her mother comes to the hot spring too. Yeah. Mm-hmm. It's interesting.
Kind of notable by its lack of mention. The other characters' parents.
Yep, you're right. It's funny how Momiji kept picking on Kyo. Like, multiple times he was like, you got the hots for Tohru. Mm-hmm. You just want to sleep with Tohru. Like, whatever. I like how Kyo also thought it was appropriate to give her the gift of spending time with Yuki. Yeah. Like, oh, Kyo.
Like, I will tolerate Yuki for you.
Yeah. I mean, of course she appreciated it, but, you know.
I also think Yuki's reaction to that is interesting. Mm-hmm. He's like, first the date, now this. Like, he seems surprised that Kyo kind of maturing a bit in being willing to do things that he normally wouldn't be willing to do for Tohru's sake.
For sure. It did seem like he was annoyed to me. I don't know if that's how
I think he was surprised at first and then kind of like, well, I guess there's nothing I can do about it.
Yeah.
I think there was kind of a noticeable like, oh, really? And then like, oh, now I have to deal with him. But
he was probably looking forward to like a quiet onsen trip with like him and Tohru and Momiji, and then because when Momiji and Kyo are together, obviously they fight. Like they fought like 3 or 4 times in these 2 chapters. Yeah. So, which is funny for us, but for Yuki, I'm sure it's probably fucking annoying. Yeah, it was interesting. His reactions are just too. And then, of course, we got the amazing and glorious scene where he gives her the ribbons, which I think is a really thoughtful gift. Like, Yuki's always, and he helped her study, too. Like, Yuki, and then she thanked him, and of course he did his, like, oh, I didn't help that much, but he had his cute smile. I wonder if that counts as his, like, natural smile at school that Tohru wanted him to have, she said, in the garden scene.
Yeah, I made a note that these were very ship teasy chapters.
They are, yeah. They are. But at least we get even ship teasing.
Yeah. Like chapter 17 had more with Kyo.
Yeah.
Chapter 18 had more with Yuki.
When they're up on the roof. We get the whole scene with Yuki this time where he's giving her the gift. And it's obviously a thoughtful gift. And she really appreciates it. And he's very charming about it. It's very, very sweet.
Very princely, but in like a genuine way.
Do you think that there's a Momiji ship cheese anywhere in here? Or is it just them two? Out of curiosity.
I mean, you could kind of see it as a one-sided thing from Momiji's angle, at least.
Yeah, he's trying
to know how old Momiji is.
Yeah, he's trying to hang out with her. He's trying to spend time with her. He's like, I'll take Tohru on a magical onsen adventure. That's the way. Perhaps. Yeah, who knows? It doesn't seem like there's a lot.
Yeah. It'd be funny if it's like, yeah, me and Tohru are going to the onsen, and these 2 losers aren't coming.
Bye. Yeah, I don't know. I wonder if that was his plan all along, but I don't think so. I think he was just being nice. I think Momiji doesn't know. It's like he's super excited. It's also kind of, I feel like this aspect of his character, huh?
I was saying it clearly wasn't because he was the one badgering them to come.
Yeah.
It'd be funny if he didn't. He
was also just like, Kyo and Yuki are coming, and they were like, what? I think it was this chapter, or like Momiji, some of the things Momiji does remind me kind of Kagura, actually, where he's just like, I know what I'll do, onsen trip, everybody's coming, like, and then like kind of the way that he teases, I don't know, like teases Kyo, or kind of, he amps up the energy a lot, like it's a little bit similar to Kagura, it's not exactly the same, but he's also kind of a like big character, I think, like she is. He instigates a lot, like she does.
How to hassle Kyo.
Yeah, who doesn't know how to hassle Kyo, though? Kyo's friends know how to hassle Kyo.
Yeah.
And of course, I guess we could talk about the onsen lady. she's funny. She's charming.
Yeah. Her in general, but I also had a note that she like treats Kyo fairly kindly.
Yeah, she said. She said when she was screaming at him that he's the cat, but she believed he was a good boy.
Thought he was a good boy.
Yeah.
Referring to him with the same kind of respect that she refers to Yuki and everything.
Yeah, exactly.
Kind of interesting and nice.
She seems to know him well too, because she was like, oh, you guys are still like, I don't think I called it out in my summary, but when they go to the room before they argue, he's like, what, I have to share a room with that damn rat or whatever? That's not what he says. He's probably like, I have to share the room with Yuki, and she's like, oh, you guys you get along the same as you always have, ha ha ha, or whatever. And like, says that they can divide the room with the screen if they want to. But yeah, so it's funny. So she knows about their relationship too, which indicates that she knows him pretty well, I think. I mean, I guess a lot of the Somas know that Kyo and Yuki fight, but someone who doesn't even live in the main house, like she lives at the onsen, so she lives outside of the main house. So it's not like she has like access to them to see their relationship. So I mean, she knows what's going on, I guess, which is nice. And yeah, she treats him just the same as everybody, as the others, which is nice too. Not all of them do that, as we've learned, right?
Yeah,
it's a good note. And she's funny. I mean,
yeah.
I think does she come back? This might be a minor spoiler, I guess, but she's a recurring character, right?
I think she comes back at least once. I don't know how often.
Not too much, but I think at least once.
I also like the way she's drawn. I don't know why. I just
I'm picking it up. Let's get some ASMR sound, page flipping sounds.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. There's something about I like the way that people draw hair in manga. This is a side note, but her hair is, she has a lot of hair. She's really expressive, which is nice too. Yeah, the Onsen lady is charming. I mean, I don't know. Yeah. She's a good character. I just flipped to the scene with Tohru's trying to hit the ball and her face is so serious. It's really funny. Completely agree with Yuki. The whole, I like how you're like, funny things that happen, ping pong scene. Yeah. It was great.
It was going to be like Yuki calmly trying to tell Kyo the rules, and then I was like, Kyo flipping the table, but it folds, and I was like, Tohru hitting the ball, and she misses. I was like, I'm just gonna write this whole thing.
Yeah, the whole scene was really funny. It's great. It also it highlights all their characters. I feel like when I was writing the summaries for these, I was like, I have to write a lot of dialogue. There's just scenes of them sitting and like talking, but all of them are like really hitting all of these notes of their like relationship with each other, which is good because their relationships are all starting to change.
Yeah, I think it's another thing where I mentioned before how like even though Yuki will like kind of be above it all, a lot of times he'll get just as into the like, competition that Kyo is dragging them into, and because like Momiji's like neither of them will play with me, and it's because they're like both
they only want to play with each other.
Competition, yeah.
Yes. Yeah, that was also funny. But then Tohru's like, play with me, and so Kyo plays with her, which is also funny. I liked how they're kind of Kyo and Yuki. They're still doing the thing where they're like on the lookout for things that are happening to Tohru. Like they were watching her when she was talking to the teacher, and then like they're kind of walking behind them when they go to the onsen. It's like they're very protective of her, and it's very charming. I think.
Yeah, and it seems like there's kind of an unspoken understanding there, like that they're both looking out for Tohru.
Yeah, it seems like. And they're both cool with it, and they're like, okay, like we're both on the same page when we're looking out for Tohru. Any other time we are fighting about everything.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's cute. These were good 2 chapters. I don't have any other things to say that were not spoilery.
Yeah, I don't think so either.
All right, except for parrot fortune telling.
They're more than, they're nice. I like they're more charming than I remembered them being. Like I remembered the events of the chapter happening, but not so much like all the details. And I was like, oh, this is nice.
Yeah, I feel the same way. Especially like I clearly remember like the scene where Yuki gives her the ribbons, but there's something about it where I was like kind of meh about it before, and this time read it and I was like, it's so charming. He's so happy. She's so happy. They're all like, and especially the scene where they're talking about their marks on their stuff. Like I didn't really remember that, and Yuki's smile is so great too. Yeah, that was really cute. The whole these chapters were nice. It was also nice and charming to get to see them all hanging out. Okay. In that case, we'll move on to spoilers. So thank you all for listening. Next time we'll talk about we're going to move on to volume 4. Who's on volume 4? I didn't even look.
Shigure is on volume 4.
Oh my god. You mean the guy I couldn't remember all this episode? Yeah. That guy.
Yeah, who's on volume 4? I don't know this guy.
This guy. The first Soma that we meet in the series, right? Yeah. Yes. Okay, good. Excellent. All right, we'll see you next time.
Bye-bye.
So now we're back to talk about spoilers. I'll kick it off with Momiji's perspective on the Foolish Traveler story again, because obviously we know that he has lost, his contact with his mother, and other things, and he talks about how the traveler cherishes certain things and how it's a good perspective. It doesn't focus on things like loss and suffering. So yeah, and then we talked about it in the non-spoilers and.
Yeah, I think like obviously it's introduced as being representative of Tohru, but I think it's also very representative of Momiji's like view on life.
Yeah. And I think they have a similar approach to that kind of thing in that sense. They have similar traits in their characters, I think. Momiji and Tohru do.
That's why my spoilers, I kind of wind up shipping them a little bit.
Yeah. I don't not ship them.
Yeah.
I've clearly written a controversial fanfic about them, so.
I ship most things in Fruits Basket. You could sell me on just about anything.
There's only a couple that you really couldn't for me. But yeah. I mean, I guess we could turn this into a ship discussion because there was a lot of ship in this. A lot to ship in these.
Section and then the ship discussion. The ship section.
I'm sure some people would like that. It would cause a lot of debates, though.
Yeah.
I mean, anyway, yeah, it's true. They're a good match for each other, I think, because of that perspective. And yeah, it's interesting to see how that plays out because they're in these like situations, I think, a couple times where they're on the same page. Momiji and Tohru are on the same page about things, and so.
Yeah, and they have some pretty emotional moments regarding loss with each other later scenes, so it's interesting that it's kind of introduced here with the Foolish Traveler story.
And I liked the way that Momiji turned that, like Kyo and Yuki, they were kind of like, why is she like that? I don't get it, or whatever. And then Momiji turned that on them and was like, well, he like that scene where he's like, when you close your eyes, what do you think? Oh yeah, I made myself a note that it was like, do you think? So in this scene, this is also related to shipping stuff, but do you think this is like starting to set up this like love triangle, or do you think it's still platonic between Yuki and Kyo Yuki and Kyo and Tohru? Wow, I can say things today. I don't know. That scene is really difficult to interpret. Like I understand intrinsically what it is. The one where he's like, when you close your eyes, what do you see?
Yeah, I never really thought of it in the terms of love triangle, really.
Yeah, maybe it's not shipping.
The how was just like how did we not notice she was like that or something?
Yeah,
that's how I always kind of interpreted it.
Me too.
Yeah,
I think it's like it's weird. It's like obvious. I just wanted to. I think we talked about it. I think I talked about it, but I was like, I wanted to look it up because I wanted to see if the other dialogue was like more it changed something about it or was clearer or whatever. But it's purposefully vague. Yeah, it's like how did we not see this? How do we not understand it? I don't know.
Yeah.
How is she like that? You could interpret it that way. Yeah. I don't know. I like it. It's really vague.
Yeah.
Vagueness leaves room for interpretation.
Another note on the Foolish Traveler is that way, way later in the story, Momiji tells the Foolish Traveler story to Akito.
Yeah. I forgot about that. Like at the end, right?
Yeah.
Is that when they're outside the hospital?
Outside the hospital, yeah.
Yeah.
And I think in that term, at that point, it's used to refer to Kureno.
Mm-hmm. And Kureno's kind of the same.
Also Tohru, but kind of.
It's both of them.
Yeah.
They both made, well, I mean, it's pointed out, I think, that they both made sacrifices for the people that they loved or whatever. They made sacrifices for the benefit of people that they love. Kureno and
I think
Tohru.
At that moment when Momiji's telling him, it's because Akito's like, had just visited Kureno and was like, how is he like that? Because
how can he still be
not mad at her after she stabbed him?
Exactly. How can he still be like that?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, you're right.
And then that led to Akito visiting Tohru, I believe.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, I think it helped Akito not be afraid to visit Tohru in that part. Because at that point, Akito is still really afraid of being rejected by everyone, in particular those people that she hurt the most, right?
Yeah, because she's just now accepted that she's been pretty awful to a lot of people, and so, would deserve to be rejected, and so she's afraid of talking to people now.
But Kureno and Tohru are the best two people to talk to, because...
Yeah, definitely.
And Tohru, holds out her hand again, like she did at the house, which is nice. Yeah, it's a good scene, too. One of our listeners commented that this scene is also referenced by Kyo. So, there's a part, I looked it up later, it's in the beach arc, which is volume 11, chapter 62, where Kyo is thinking about her when Kyo admits to himself that he loves her. He also remembers this part of the scene where it's like, when you close your eyes, what do you think? So, yeah. Did I say the person's Twitter handle? It's xgirl109. Just, I can't remember. Yeah. It's funny how many things get set up. We're still in the first, 3 volumes out of, 22 or something. So this is, not even, it's the first, 6th of the series or something.
Yeah.
So many things that are going to get you come over and over again are getting set up. So. Can't remember if this comes up at any other time.
Yeah, I'm not sure.
Maybe she's just walking around being like, let me tell you the story about a foolish traveler. Yeah. It's a good, like, I don't know, it's an analogy for them, I guess.
It's an allegory.
Allegory, yeah. That. Lascivious. I thought the scene where Kyo says he'll go to is really funny. There's multiple scenes of them at the laundry, like when Tohru's hanging up laundry. Like, obviously there's the one, most notably perhaps, there's the one where they hug through the sheet. I can't remember if there are any more.
I feel like there is, but I can't think of one in particular.
I can't think of any other ones, but for sure there's multiple scenes of Tohru hanging up laundry, and I'm pretty sure it's like Kyo and Tohru. It's like Tohru goes to talk to Kyo on the roof, and Kyo goes to talk to Tohru when she's doing laundry. It's like a scene where it's a setting where they tend to have these like really heartfelt scenes. So it's kind of interesting that it's setting that up for later, I guess. I don't know. I mean, it's like, I don't think it's really narratively setting something up, but it's set up as a place now where they have like private conversations, I think.
Yeah.
It reminded me of that when I saw that scene. And I always think it's kind of ironic that Momiji teases Kyo so hard about having a crush on Tohru, when then later he develops feelings for her, or has them, as far as we can tell, in these scenes too. So he's like, oh, Kyo has the hots, Kyo wants to, you just want to like sleep in Tohru's room or whatever, like multiple times in these chapters. But then, I don't know, so is he just like deflecting that onto Kyo or something? And of course he sees what Tohru doesn't see, which is that he does actually have a crush on her. So I wonder if...
Yeah. He also ends up like using that same kind of teasing to kind of get Kyo to get off his ass and do something about it much later on.
So many people have to tease Kyo to get him to get off his ass and do something about it. And people had to do that to Tohru too, which is also funny. Kagura had to do it to Tohru. Yeah. Anyway, I just thought I don't think there's anything super important narratively to say, except that it's just like it's recurring and this is the beginning. Yeah. Do you want to talk about the inn, the super whatever, the steamy onsen adventure, whatever Momiji called it? So at the onsen, I thought it was interesting. This is like a really small side note, but the hostess said that she doesn't do any of the like hosting stuff anymore. Like she usually, it said like I watch from the shadows or whatever, and Kyo thinks like, oh well, you're not in Dokami anymore then, or whatever, right? It kind of reminded me of how Hattori said he only practices within the Soma family now. And so we know both of them are impacted by the curse because she's Ritsu's mother. So I wonder if that's kind of like part of the toll that the curse has taken on her. I don't think there's no canon to support any of that, but I thought it was interesting at least that happened to both of them. Both of these people who had these like sort of like public professions, they're now sort of, I mean, it doesn't say that they don't have guests, but
yeah, I think it's sort of the isolation of being associated with the zodiac.
Yeah, I think so.
It's like even the people who aren't directly in there end up being affected by it.
They are. I mean, I think we see other evidence of other family members and parents being affected by people who are in the zodiac. Like,
yeah, I was gonna make a mention that when we get Momiji's backstory, he talks about how the parents of the zodiac animals, they tend to either get really overprotective or completely reject the kid. And so you see, like, Ritsu's mother is obviously kind of protective of him, even though we haven't met Ritsu yet, but just from the way she talks about him and talks about how she was worried about
and the others too
about the curse.
She said she's worried about like Yuki and Kyo, or it's implied she's talking about Yuki, Kyo, and Momiji, but yeah, she's worried about the others. And of course we get Hiro and his relationship with his parents or his mother, I guess. We see like it affecting other people in different ways too, like Yuki's parents. Like we see Yuki's mother has this kind of like high and mighty attitude.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I was like, they either get overprotective or reject them. I'm like, unless you're Yuki and Ayame's parents and you just see dollar signs.
Yeah, basically, I was going to say there's some who get like a additional different type of benefit. It's like people who get their lives get completely screwed up, like Momiji's mother, or they figure out a way to like use it to their advantage, like Yuki and Ayame's mother. I guess like it's just another view on how people who are impacted, not even just directly the Junichi, people who know them are also impacted by the curse too. Which is like another red flag for Tohru, but she won't see it. So Tohru is like, please get out. And then of course Tohru said that her health should be her primary. Tohru said that the hostess's health should be her primary concern because of course we know how Tohru feels about people's health. So it's another little minor spoiler Or like another thing to pile on top of her worrying about how people are healthy or not.
Yeah. We also had her worrying about like forgetting her mom when she going to the onsen.
Yes, I felt like this time that I read this, it was very striking.
Mm-hmm.
Immediately she's worried. The very first thing that she says is like, well, I couldn't do that. I couldn't leave mom here.
Mm-hmm.
And then she brings her, which is it's fine, but I just think it's interesting that she was so worried. And she's like, she's like, if I go, then mom will be mad at me or something. Like I can't remember exactly what she says, but she's worried
she's
about
like, would she forgive me?
Yeah, would she forgive me for going and like having fun or whatever, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I thought that was really intense. It just clearly shows how she's still impacted by the loss of her mother. We talked about, I mean, she has this like, she hasn't really grieved her mother's loss yet. She's still deeply impacted by it and kind of in an unhealthy way, I think. Like she's really obsessed with how her mother might take some of her behavior or whatever. She's still very attached to her. This is just the beginning of hinting at that.
Definitely still somewhere in the middle of that grief cycle.
Yeah, which is, I'm sure it's awful.
Mm-hmm.
But it's interesting how strong her reaction was and that it was all focused on her mother. Not like, oh, I can't take time off, or, oh, like, I need to help somebody else. It was like, my mom forgive me if I go do this fun thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was really sad. And they're just like, it's fine. It's just a hot spring. Like, multiple times different characters thought that. So.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it gets kind of played off as just part of her, like, overreaction to the luxury of going to the onsen. But once you know the later stuff.
Yeah. It's definitely beyond that, for sure.
And
then, we heard about Ritsu. Of course, we know why the hostess was apologizing about him or whatever right off the bat. And she's like, deep down, he's a good person or whatever. I was like, of course he's a good person. But
I'm sure we'll see that. She's like, to the rest of the world,
he's that way or something.
He's that way, but he really is a good boy. So.
Yeah.
It's more like she's apologizing for like how the world sees him rather than him himself.
Yeah, I thought her the hostess's reaction about Ritsu is really charming. She's like, I love him, and he's my precious boy or whatever. It's really charming. I used to think like the hostess is obviously kind of a gag, like her scream apologizing is a gag. But this time I noticed in her dialogue, it's nice how much she cares about the Zodiac and Kyo, like we talked about in the thing. Like she's actually more on par with like, I don't know, like Hiro's mom or something. Who I always think is like the quintessential nice mom of the Zodiac. But yeah, it's cool. Like I thought it was nice how much it seems like she cares about the Zodiac and has been involved with them and understands them. And open to them, even including Kyo. So yeah, it was cute. I mean, these are like little tiny pieces of dialogue that we're looking at, but I think like it implies a lot about her, which is nice. So yeah, we'll get to meet Ritsu later too. That'll be fun.
Yep, I think he shows up like just before or just after the True Form arc. I can't remember which.
I think just after.
Yeah, I want to say it's after.
I think it's just after, but I think we're confused because in the anime it's before because they moved a bunch of stuff around so that it would be the climax.
Yeah, I think Ritsu and Hiro both came after.
They did. Hiro did for sure. I remember that. Yeah.
But both of those got moved to before to make the whole True Form arc the climax, which makes sense.
Yeah.
It'd be weird to end on
Ritsu spilling milk Ritsu everywhere.
Hiro. Yeah.
It's like climax. Hiro is like a mean kid or whatever. The end. Yeah. I don't have any other spoilers.
No, that's all I had.
All right, cool. These were good. I enjoyed these chapters.
Yeah, you're charming.
Especially the hot spring hostess.
Yeah.
We'll get to see her voice acted.
Yeah, that'll be exciting.
I hope it's as exciting as the first one.
Yeah. I was just thinking I did really enjoy the first anime interpretation of her, both in the voice acting and the animation, because I was remembering one of the parts where she's like, I apologize to the world. I can remember it.
She's like, go Mendasai. Yeah.
In the animation, which is really funny.
Yeah, she makes a lot of weird like sound effects. Like also the fact that she like leans on Kyo when they're leaving cracks me up every time I see it. I was like, there it is.
Just her head. Like she's not like full body leaning on him because that would be a bad idea, but she's still leaning her head on him.
She's using him as much as she can. Yeah. And Kyo is like it's like the most annoyed person to pick, which is funny.
Yeah. Like he's not doing anything about it. He's just like, get off.
Yeah. And I mean she's kind to him, and it's physical contact with him, which a lot of them don't do too. So There's that too.
Yeah, a lot of them are like, I don't want to touch the monster or whatever.
Especially Akito, but...
Akito and his dad.
Yeah, well, yeah. Right.
Falls under the terrible end of the parent spectrum.
Yeah, basically. Maybe the most, I don't know.
I think Rin's might be worse.
I think Rin's are worse because they were under a facade. I was just thinking about it, and I just remembered that scene in my head where they like yell at her at the table and she's like a little kid.
Yeah, didn't they like physically?
It's heartbreaking. Probably, I think so. Rin is in one of the most terrible situations, I think, of all the Zodiac.
Like, everything about Rin's life is terrible except for Haru.
Basically, and that's why their relationship is so great.
They're so close to each other.
Yeah. I like how Yuki like tries to be friends. She like tries to remove herself from so many situations, but I like how Yuki's trying to like connect with her, but she refuses to connect with him.
Yeah, because I think like this is so off topic for the
spoilers. Yeah, well, maybe I'll cut it, but it's fine.
But yeah, because like I think
the people are here for spoilers.
Like other than Haru, Yuki probably knew her the best.
Probably
he didn't know her that well because she was hanging out with Haru, who was hanging out with Yuki when they were younger.
Didn't he say that she would just leave? Like, isn't it canon? Yeah, she would go and she would leave because she heard Akito coming or whatever.
Yeah.
So that Haru didn't get in trouble.
Yeah. To, like, delay whatever maid or whatever was coming so that Haru would be able to leave and not get in trouble.
Yeah, exactly. Rin's a good character. I can't wait till we get to talk about her. She's one of my favorites, personally.
Yeah, I'm so excited to see all the manga-only characters animated, too.
Yes, I can't wait to hear Rin's voice. I was also reading her dialogue, and I was like, this is going to be so good. I can't wait. It's probably going to be, like, next year. But it's fine. Yeah. Whatever.
Yeah, she'll be in the first season.
I wonder when do you think the climax of this season is going to be? Like the true form?
I think it might be.
Because that's about the right time. Since basically like they cut a couple of things and moved Hiro and Ritsu in to the original anime. So maybe if they don't cut those things, then it'll be about the same time.
Yeah.
I could see that being a good season finale.
Yeah. It's definitely the most dramatic early event.
It also sets up a lot of things. Just like Tohru leaving, it kind of also... It sets the pace for the next bit of chapters, right?
Yeah.
So, okay. I think that's it for this episode. / maybe too much.
Although Hiro and Kisa are in the credits.
Yeah.
So
that's true.
Hiro might show up.
Maybe the climax will be Hiro turning into a sheep. Or Kisa biting Toru's hand, and that's the end of the credits play. Oh. I love Kisa, too.
Yeah. She's cute.
Yeah. I think that's the end / maybe too much of this episode. So I'll cut it off. Thank you all for listening. We'll see you next time to talk about chapter 19.
And 20 or just 19?
19 and 20. What happens in chapter 19 and 20?
Oh.
Okay. Well,
actually, I have volume 4 right in front of me. Let me. Haru and Momiji, and then there's Akito showing up.
Oh, when they come to school.
So those would probably be good paired because Akito shows up at the end of
they're at school.
Chapter 19, and then transitions into that with chapter 20. So, yeah.
All right. Good. Next time we'll talk about chapters 19 and 20. Anyway, if I haven't cut all of that, thank you all for listening. We'll see you next time.
Bye-bye.
Bye.